Hi, it's Christina from the Sisyphean Journal, and today's November 19th, and I'm going to look again at this idea that abortion is just this non-event. Having a baby will ruin your life, but abortion's like getting a tooth filled or having your appendix out. It's a little inconvenient, and you just get on with things like nothing ever happened, right? No risks at all. Well, it was not a non-event in 14-year-old Sandra's life. In October of 1984, 14-year-old Sandra went to a Planned Parenthood in Missouri with her 21-year-old half-sister Karen for a pregnancy test. The test came up positive. Sandra told Karen she wanted an abortion, so Karen made an appointment per the referral to Reproductive Health Services. And I'm not going to blame Karen here. She probably believed all the rhetoric about how abortion is a non-event. It's no more significant than getting a tooth drilled. You just have this procedure and you go on with things. So she took her in. Now, Karen later said that during the counseling session, Sandra didn't seem ambivalent, said she thought she was too young to have a child, and lied, saying that her mother knew about the abortion plan, approved of it, and had provided the money. So we have Karen acting like a mom instead of consulting with mom and just taking her little sister in, no doubt thinking she's helping. This will be a non-event in Sandra's life and she'll just chug along with things. So 3 days later, Karen brought Sandra back to Reproductive Health Services for the abortion. Now, it's important to note that Sandra had already led a very difficult life. At age 7, she had witnessed the stabbing death of one of her half-brothers. At age 11, she was diagnosed with a conduct disorder. By age 12, her problems included drinking alcohol, running away from home, temper outbursts, skipping school, crying, and nightmares about her brother's murder. She was hospitalized at least twice and had received outpatient therapy and medication. So she was, in short, a very high-risk patient, likely to suffer severe psychological after effects. If this facility did a thorough workup, spent some time, remember a woman and her doctor, a good consultation would have looked at the fact that at the very least, the pro-lifers would say you need to walk her through having that baby. A dead baby's not going to fix your mental health problems. But even if you're assuming that an abortion is beneficial to her, you want to have her set up with counseling services so she can deal with it. You don't want to just abort her baby and then send her loose. But that's what they did. Sandra signed the consent form, and Karen signed as the parent or guardian, even though she was not a legal guardian. So when they filled out the paperwork, they checked no for the question, have you ever been hospitalized other than for childbirth? And Karen later said that they thought that did not include psychiatric hospitalizations. They thought it was only for physical ailments. So again, there was this failure to thoroughly explore the situation with this little girl and her big sister. Sandra was shown a film called First Trimester Informed Consent, and it said, a few women have negative emotional feelings after an abortion. You may feel slightly depressed, but those feelings are normal. Severe depression is not to be expected. If you are severely depressed after this abortion, it may be that your feelings about ending a pregnancy have not been completely resolved. Well, it seems like you should resolve those issues before you do this irreversible thing. But no, they just chugged right ahead. After the abortion, Sandra holed up in her room a lot, crying. On November 19th, Sandra's mother overheard her talking with her boyfriend on the phone. The boyfriend had supposedly gotten another girl pregnant, and Sandra said she was going to jump off a bridge. Half an hour later, she walked about half a mile to the Chippewa Street pedestrian bridge, which crossed Arsenal Street, a busy 4-lane road with poor lighting in the evening dusk. The pedestrian bridge had chain link fencing about 4 feet high to prevent jumping, but a jogger reported seeing Sandra climb over the fence on the south side. After hesitating briefly, she let go of the fence and jumped feet first about 15 to 30 feet into the southbound traffic lanes below. And she landed right in the path of a green sedan driven by a 35-year-old local man. Now, he slammed on the brakes, but he was unable to avoid hitting her, and it threw her about 10 feet into the median and southbound lanes. He stopped immediately and ran to her side. She was conscious, moaning, "It hurts, help me." The man stood near the fallen girl and waved his arms, trying to slow traffic and prevent her from being hit a second time. A construction worker in his late 20s was driving behind the green sedan in his blue pickup. He saw the man standing over Sandra, waving his arms, so the construction worker slammed on his brakes, flashed his lights, and honked his horns to try to alert traffic, and pulled over to try to block a lane. Now, a woman in her 40s was driving north in a white compact. She saw a stopped green sedan, a man waving his arms, and a pickup truck with honking horns and flashing headlights, and she thought this was a road rage incident. She panicked and accelerated past the scene, running over Sandra's legs and abdomen. She arrived at a friend's house about a mile away, trembling and saying, "Something terrible happened back there. I think I hit someone." So she and the friend went back to the scene. By the time they arrived, police and EMS were there. A bystander had gone through Sandra's pockets, found her ID, and hurried to fetch her mother, Geneva. Geneva screamed her daughter's name, but Sandra, who was unrecognizable from her injuries, didn't respond. By then, she was unconscious and barely clinging to life. Medics intubated her, applied tourniquets, and loaded her into the ambulance. And while the ambulance rushed Sandra the 1.5 miles to St. Louis Children's Hospital, she stopped breathing, but they were able to resuscitate her. And she was met at the ER by a trauma team and taken directly to the operating room. She had a ruptured spleen, ruptured liver, fracture of her pelvis and femur, rib fractures, collapsed lungs. During a 2-hour surgery, doctors fought to repair her damaged blood vessels. She was given 4 units of blood and transferred to the pediatric intensive care unit, still sedated. But in spite of their heroic efforts, Sandra was pronounced dead at 10:30 from multiple internal injuries and exsanguination, and her death was ruled a suicide. Now, Sandra's mother sued for her daughter's death, claiming that they had failed to contact the mother in compliance with the law. An expert noted at the time of Sandra's death she had been depressed for several weeks, and they said that the suicide was a consequence of the depression, that the abortion was the straw that broke the camel's back. The judge said that Sandra's mother and the witnesses had failed to prove that the abortion clinic had been negligent in failing to adequately explore Sandra's history, and that Sandra had not been proved to have killed herself due to an uncontrollable impulse. And to add insult to injury, the suicide had occurred during the time that Missouri law governing the consent of minors was enjoined by the federal courts, so the law to protect girls like Sandra didn't apply. So instead of taking a holistic approach to this already traumatized young woman, they treated abortion like a non-event and just sent her out to cope on her own, and she was not able to do that.